This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to freedom. Stars tonight together. Here everyone is singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate, Rewind and Rewatch, episode 19, covering Open the Ultimate Gate from Atlanta, Georgia at the Presidential Ballroom on April 3rd, 2011. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find Open the Voice Gate on the Voices of Wrestling feed or on the dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed in all podcast platforms and applications. You can find us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, you can click on the link in the show notes and submit a donation through Redbubble. They could be recurring, it could be one time, and any donations are... We love donations if you do it. It'd be really sweet. But anyways, I am one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Iron Mike Spears, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Case Lowe. And Case, we've made it through Wrestlemania Weekend, and what a Wrestlemania Weekend it was.
A bizarre triple shot for Dragon Gate USA, and it ends on a weird note. It began with Open the Southern Gate, which is a really strange show, but one even 2 weeks removed from it. It's one of those shows that has stuck with me more than others. I think there have been a handful of really good shows that we've watched to this point in the Rewatch project, but they're just good indie shows. There was something a little bit different about Open the Southern Gate, the Jon Moxley versus Naruki Doi match, the Shima versus Johnny Gargano match in the main event. While 2 out of the 3 weren't exactly spreadsheet material, I wouldn't call them great, but I would call them very good. It was such a unique show that it just stands out from the DGUSA pack. And then Mercury Rising 2011, the show we talked about last week with Joey Bay. An outstanding show. I mean, a lot of really, really good stuff. Some stuff that over-delivered for me. A fun main event, a great title match between Pac and Akira Tozawa. And then we have Open the Ultimate Gate 2011, a confusing show, just full of head-scratching decisions. And I will say now and come back to it later, a show that unfortunately felt very familiar. And I can kind of expand on that as we go along. But I had seen this show before, rewatching it again, it's not that familiar since, but a Gabe Sapolsky-produced Wrestlemania Weekend show like this, I have seen this song and dance before.
Yeah, and this week on the show, we have a couple notes, and then we're going to get to the show itself, and then have like a big wrap-up. But this one, really, for better or for worse, felt most like a Sapolsky WWN Mania show, with all the positives and negatives that it entails, in my opinion.
I think that's entirely fair. I mean, that's what it was. This, in a weird way, becomes the archetype for some of the Evolve shows that would happen years later. Like, again, this show just, I know what this show is. I've seen this show. There are parts of it I liked, parts of it I didn't like, and that is the magic of Dragon Gate USA.
Yeah, and, you know, this is something that this show was done, I believe, like right before WrestleMania. The attendance of it was 350. The worked attendance, Case, take a guess what the work attendance was.
What was the shoot attendance? You said 350?
350, yes.
Shoot attendance has to be about 780 people.
According to Cage Match, 916. 916. So, before we get into the show itself, as I alluded to before, right, we have a couple notes, Case, because there's some card mix-ups that happen and some injury stuff to take care of in the lead up to the show.
That is correct, but I just now realized as we're sitting here, we talked about the Ring of Honor shows that happened during 2011 WrestleMania Weekend last week. we never talked about WrestleMania itself. Mike, I'm going to run you down the WrestleMania 27 card from Atlanta, Georgia. You tell me if any of this stuff sounds familiar to you. Just, I'll take that, because looking at this card now doesn't exactly ring a bell. But we have Sheamus versus Daniel Bryan in a dark match, which ended in a no contest. But Wikipedia is telling me it was also a lumberjack match in 4 minutes. A 4-minute lumberjack no contest. That sounds atrocious. The Great Khali won a battle royal. Edge defeated Alberto Del Rio in the opener. Cody Rhodes defeated Rey Mysterio. The Big Show, Kane, Kofi Kingston, and Santino Marella. Mike, they defeated the core of Ezekiel Jackson, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, and Wade Barrett. Randy Orton defeated CM Punk on what I believe was the work rate match of the show. There is a 13.5-minute long Michael Cole versus Jerry the King Lawler match with Stone Cold Steve Austin as your special guest referee. A half-hour match between The Undertaker and Triple H. The semi-main event on this show, John Morrison, Snooki, and Trish Stratus defeating Dolph Ziggler and Lay Cool. And in the main event, The Miz headlined WrestleMania and defeated John Cena in a match that I have zero recollection of. Mike, any memories of this show at all?
Actually, I remember when we did the show in Phoenix, and the only memory I really had was Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker. I have a lot of memories of the show, actually. Like, I'm kind of surprised that you don't have as many, but also time frame wise kind of makes sense in a little bit of a way. I remember that Sheamus and Daniel Bryan match, because they would later talk about how they felt like they were gypped in on the pre-show and they were going to make the match next year in Miami into something special. That didn't end up happening, of course.
The Miami WrestleMania next year, I have a ton of memories of, because that was the show that got me back into wrestling, because I pretty much stopped after the Benoit incident in 2007, and then had some morbid curiosity years later of like, I wonder what's happening. And then I saw the CM Punk versus Chris Jericho match being advertised. That is what drew me to that show, and unfortunately, that led me to where we are now, WrestleMania 28 in Miami.
I mean, that's going to be a real, like, synchronicity moment for us when we talk about that weekend of shows, since I was at those Mania DGUSA shows. But, yeah, Cody and Rey Mysterio, I remember, because this was when Cody got his nose broken, and they were doing the Beautiful Disaster. Definitely remember Snooki. And then I have, like, distinct memories of this Miz versus John Cena match, because I had the awesome Miss Hate Me Now video beforehand.
That's right. Yeah, the Rich Craich special. He loves that video, and I do remember that now, but I don't remember anything about this match. I mean, I guess I've seen it at some point, but a 20-minute Miz John Cena main event of WrestleMania, and it does not ring a bell at all.
Well, like, I remember the storyline and all this stuff because The Rock was involved, and you know how I feel about The Rock. So I have to rep the University of Miami alums where I can. But I just, like, I remember, like, it happening, and I remember, like, oh, yeah, no, this is a part of the thing, because then it became the lead-up to Cena and Rock at WrestleMania 28. So, or 27. I forget, whichever one's the one in Miami.
This one's
the
27, next year's 28, so Miami is 28.
28. So I was right the first time, WrestleMania 28. So, just, like, you know, it's one of those things that it's such a, like, complete, like, something that, like, is a part of my memory that I'm never going to forget, you know? Like, and it's just kind of impossible for me not to remember that, you know? So, it's wild.
That is wild. That is unfortunate that is something you cannot get out of your memory. But, you know, that's why we're here. So, in terms of news and notes for Open the Ultimate Gate 2011, well, as we talked about a little bit last week, there just wasn't a ton of notes and newsworthy stuff in the news wires leading up to these shows. It was weirdly sparse for a WrestleMania weekend. The one thing that should be noted before we do indeed open the Ultimate Gate in 2011 is that the original lineup for this show featured a grudge match between Naruki Doi and Johnny Gargano, and it opened the United Gate title match between Masato Yoshino and Pac defending against Shima and Ricochet. But as we speculated last week, we turned out to be correct. Ricochet hurt his ankle in the Mercury Rising 6-man tag. He is off of this show, so we get Masato Yoshino and Pac against Shima and Naruki Doi, and we get Johnny Gargano versus Jimmy Rave, which is our opener on Open the Ultimate Gate 2011.
Yeah, it's just, Doi versus Gargano is a match that I would have been really interested in at that time, but of course, plans fail. One note about the show also before we get into it, Matt Hardy was at this show, and from the Bryan Alvarez reviews, since he was there live, he said, Matt Hardy was at the show, at the bar. No, seriously. His girlfriend Ruby Sky works here. Apparently, he managed to get himself kicked out of one bar this weekend. There might have been another big blow-up as well. He made his presences known that way. So, yeah, that's... Luckily, Matt Hardy's doing a lot better, but this was a time that Matt Hardy was having some issues at that time. So, that was the only other, note going into it. And, Case, let's just get into the show itself.
Yes, please. This is a wild one to get into, so by all means, lead the way.
All right, so... Open the Ultimate Gate from the Presidential Ballroom, as I mentioned earlier. Attendance was 350, billed as 916, which is still a crazy note that they had here. We open up to Pac and Yoshino backstage, and Babyface Pac is not a great promo. He said that Blood Warriors has their attention now, and Yoshino says that they will never forget. And then Blood Warriors are backstage, and they say that they are going to end World 1. It's something Pac's just not a great face promo for, as laudatory as we are towards him. Face promo work was never really his strong suit. He just does not feel like this, and it's kind of wild considering how great of a heel promo he became.
The sheer contrast of watching Pac and Yoshino, both of them essentially cutting a broken English promo just because Pac is so shy and timid and doesn't really like to speak, to Shima and Doi cutting a broken English promo that is so charismatic and chaotic and off the charts. It is such a funny parallel to start the show, where again it's, Pac is whispering and we're the best tag team in the world and we're going to go out there and fight. And then it's Shima and Doi just yelling and making noise. It's like, oh my god, these guys are so cool. When Shima wants to be, he's the best. And this promo was very, very heartwarming for me.
Yeah, it was something that, Shima going heel and really just saying, I'm not even going to fuck around with English a lot now, was really kind of saying whoa, all right, you don't need to as a heel because you operate on a certain level that no one else in the promotion does with promos work, that you're able to translate from Japanese into a promotion that's primarily designated for English speakers.
Yeah.
It's insane. All right, so the opening match was the match that Case mentioned earlier, Johnny Gargano versus Jimmy Rave. Gargano defeated Rave in 14 minutes and 25 seconds with the Gargano escape, and we talked about this starting to feel like a WWN, WrestleMania match and a show. This was one of those matches. I thought it was competent and good. It just was some of those matches you're this is a solid wrestling match that's going on a little bit longer than it should, and we're done. That was my only big takeaway from this match.
Yeah, the cage match time is 14:25. I noticed the announcers called it at the 16-minute mark when Johnny Gargano finally made Jimmy Rave tap. And yes, they were dealt a bad hand because Gargano versus Doi was a much higher profile matchup. Although given the booking of Ronin, I'm not sure Gargano would have won that. But when you are in this situation where, yes, Jimmy Rave is respected, yes, he has a relationship with Gabe Sapolsky already, but for Jimmy Rave to go 15 minutes, we'll split the difference between 14 and 16 and call it 15 minutes. For him to go 15 minutes with Johnny Gargano in the opening match, I just don't understand what they're doing with Ronin. This is a guy that Gargano needed to go out there and kill. This match could have been half the length it was, and it would have been twice as effective. And it's just not what I want to see on a Dragon Gate USA show, and that's no fault to Jimmy Rave. I mean, he's someone that had done Dragon Gate tours in the past. It actually has a few very fun matches on his Wrestle Jam 2006 tour, but this Gargano Rave style, if it happens on Evolve 7, maybe I think differently of it, but this is one of the few times so far where I look at this promotion, I'm like, ugh, I gotta watch these two Americans wrestle on this show with such a long an inefficient opener. I didn't like how long it took Gargano to put this guy away. So again, somewhere between 14 and 16 minutes, it's just a lengthy opener with not much substance. I gave it 2 3/4.
Yeah, I went 3 1/4 just because it was competently done. Like, this was not a bad match. It just was a match that happened and went way too long. And other than having a match on the card, there was really no purpose to this.
It was like a painfully simple match. Like, it was, I don't want to call it a wrestling school match because the technique was, much further ahead than that. But it almost just seemed like two guys just kind of like rolling around and seeing what will happen. And the fact that this match went so long, I don't understand it. And it's coming off of, Gargano getting beat by Shima, which I understand. I think it's part of a larger story, but then they lose the 6-man the night before. And as I mentioned last week, for whatever reason, that really rubbed me the wrong way. I thought that was a real missed opportunity with Ronin. And it just would have been better had Gargano, kicked this guy, made him tap, move on. Because there's a lot of Ronin on this show. We got a lot of Johnny Gargano here. And I think we could have used less of him in this spot.
Yeah. It just felt really tacked on. And then after this match, we had another backstage promo. Moxley and YAMATO. They were talking about Moxley was talking about YAMATO being a defending champion and how they partied all last night and that they were going to finish this and prove that Kamikaze USA was the definitive stable and DGUSA because they were going to take out Akira Tozawa.
I've got some thoughts here. First of all, you saying Moxley is a huge missed opportunity. How these men weren't crowned the first United Gate Tag Team Champions simply on the branding of Moxley is criminal. I also will be sharing a ton of thoughts on Jon Moxley and the final night of Kamikaze USA as we go along in the show. The first one being that given this promo and the fact that YAMATO himself said he, quote, celebrated with many women the night before, it's like Kamikaze USA was just done incorrectly at almost every step because there is a real interesting, almost odd couple pairing between Moxley and YAMATO. And I understand that YAMATO, at least at this point, didn't speak a ton of English. You don't want him cutting a ton of promos. But it seems like they could have milked so much more out of this relationship. In this promo, the trio of Moxley and YAMATO and Trina Michaels together, I was just weirdly entertained by it. I really liked it. And it made me more upset as the show went along and we saw Kamikaze USA completely implode. But I liked this promo a lot.
It's something where with the Moxley and with them, it's just like, I remember talking about United Weekend about the really cool chemistry that Moxley had with Tozawa. Like, it was there and it was apparent. Maybe Gabe thought that, people don't want to see this, but then they have Ricochet right into Blood Warriors and being just as a member of the unit interacting as much as anything. You have Brodie Lee on the microphone for Blood Warriors. Why was he so set on having Moxley set apart from this unit?
That's exactly it, because Brodie is so good in his role in Blood Warriors as the guy that can talk, because Ricochet, yes, obviously American, but has the presence of one of the Japanese proper talent because he can't talk. He has nothing to offer there. So, like in Philly we talked about, the segment was getting a little lost in translation. Shima was trying to cut an in-ring promo, and it just wasn't really connecting with the crowd that they were turning heel at that moment. Brodie takes the mic, says, trash, you people, whatever. It was great. And I think we really missed out on more Moxley, Tozawa, YAMATO, Shingo together. The Japanese trio there, Tozawa, YAMATO, Shingo, historically charismatic, historically great. And if you put a mouthpiece there with Moxley, I think that is what this unit should have been. And as time went on and they fizzled out, it's such a wasted opportunity. It's so frustrating to look back on.
Yeah, no, it's something we'll be revisiting throughout the show. The next match was the 6-man freestyle. This had Rich Swann defeating AR Fox as the finishing fall with a standing 450. Other people involved in this match were Sami Callihan, Eric Cannon, Lince Dorado, and Silas Young. The overall match on Cage Match was listed at 9:13. I think we can already tell that the times on Cage Match are a little bit off for the show. And interesting freestyle. They really kind of treated this thing as, okay, we have the Cannon and Callahan thing going on and doing their own distinct thing, and then you had like a 4-way freestyle with the other guys. It was kind of interesting with this. I don't know if I really liked it, but at least they were doing something in this match, whereas they did nothing in the open.
I talked last week's show about how I thought that freestyle match was kind of the perfect version of a 6-way freestyle, because other than John Davis pinning Stalker Ichikawa, which I maintain was it was a minor thing, but I think it was a big mistake. Stalker looked great, John Davis had a moment to shine, Brodie Lee looked awesome, and the star of that match was Jimmy Jacobs. And I think the point of these multi-man matches is to throw a bunch of bodies on the ring and to have one guy stand above, to tell one story, to have one guy come out looking awesome. And this match completely failed at that. No one got over. They did just another convoluted thing, almost akin to the Homicide deal at United Finale, where he drapes Moxley's arm over him after he's beaten him up because he doesn't care about wins, he just wants to inflict pain. Well, Sami Callihan and Eric Cannon are destroying people in this match, and then they just decide to leave at some point. They remove themselves from the match, which is so counterproductive to the fundamentals of professional wrestling, and you're left with A.R. Fox and Rich Swann and, a pre-real man Silas Young. And Silas Young at this era, it is so funny watching him in 2011 because he is just the most generic indie wrestler there is. Just brings nothing unique to the table.
It's generic, and he's, like, for his size, likes to fly, which is
it's
wild.
Awful. I really loved Silas Young for a good while in Ring of Honor. He was really good on weekly TV for a long time. I mean, you have to remember when Kevin Steen exited Ring of Honor, his last thing that he did was he put over Silas Young, and I could write, I think, an entire book on the summer of Ring of Honor in 2014 and the amount of opportunities they wasted, and Silas Young is just unfortunately one of the many careers that were derailed that summer. But here, Silas is a long-haired guy with no personality who is doing flips, but is not really doing Dragon Gate level flips. Like, he's kind of just a guy that has a bit more body control than the average human. Whereas I will say Lince Dorado's the other guy in this match. Once again, I thought Lince Dorado looked really, really good here. Especially him and Eric Cannon, which you put Lince Dorado and Eric Cannon on paper and you go, well, that's not going to work. But here, I actually really liked their chemistry. Dorado's the one that eats the pin on Swann standing 450, so at least Ronin gets some sort of, boost between, this and the Gargano opener. But this is a 2.5-star match. I just thought they brought nothing innovative to the table. No one came out looking better. This was the true definition of a collection of spots, in my opinion.
Yeah, this was just spots, and it existed, and it was all for after Callahan and Cannon left, it was pretty much like straight to the finish, it felt like. I was like, oh, well, that happened, and it leaves you perplexed watching this if you aren't aware what's going to happen later on in the show, right? And it's just like, okay, this happened. Okay, this is what we're doing right now, and it's just weird.
I think,
and it made sense.
Go ahead.
Why they did it, but it's just weird, and like it was all building to this, but completely Rich Swann, member of Ronin, gets the win here, and you're like, oh, he got a win here, but it doesn't matter at all.
No, not at all. Because Cannon and Callahan didn't care about winning. It completely devalued the match. And to your point, I think the emotion of perplexion, that word needs to be removed from wrestling. You should never feel perplexed watching wrestling. We're seeing it in modern New Japan. We're seeing it in 2011 Dragon Gate USA. Arguably the peaks of entertainment. We are left feeling perplexed for that matter. And I hate it. Like, you should not be scratching your head going, why did that guy do that? And it happens too often, and when that happens, it's a bad story that's being told, so don't tell those stories. Like I said last week, am so curious to see how the D.U.F. stuff holds up, because I'm looking forward to going back and revisiting all of that, but I hate what they did here where Cannon and Callahan removed themselves from the match.
Yep, and after that, we had a Freedom Fight video. Boy, I'm getting fucking tired of the Freedom Fight videos and the WWN stuff. It's just, they had to do it on every show. I know why they did, but I'm just like going like, okay, we get it.
It's too
We get
long.
it.
I don't have an issue with them pumping out the DVD
30
sales.
seconds.
It's too long of a video.
And I'm willing to wager that we don't have, like, I don't think I've ever seen any, like, DGUSA DVD sales reports. But I'm willing to wager that if you're someone watching this show, seeing how few tickets were sold and how the pay-per-view didn't knock them dead, I'm willing to guess that if you watch this show, you probably already have a copy or have pre-ordered Freedom Fight 2010.
I think that's a safe assumption.
And then we went back to the ring as the god himself, Hollywood Sakura Ichikawa, came out. And then all of Blood Warrior came out, and Ricochet's hobbling. Like, you could tell, like, good reason why he was not wrestling tonight. Shima calls Stalker Ichikawa a cockroach and a joke. He makes him fight Brodie, and he says, in 4 words, "Hey, Brodie, kill him." And then we had Hollywood Stalker Ichikawa versus Brodie Lee. Brodie Lee won in a minute 59 with a truck stop, and you know, it just was it's Stalker Ichikawa. Like, we had a Stalker Ichikawa match against Brodie Lee. It was exactly what I expected, and for that, I loved it.
I can't believe they only brought Stalker in once, because he is so beloved in front of this Atlanta crowd that he's someone that should have come over in Miami. He's someone that should have come over in Secaucus, New Jersey. And had there been Dragon Gate talent in New Orleans, he should have been on the list. He should have been on Mania weekends from here on out. And I would like to know if that was a thing where Gabe wanted him again and Stalker said no, or if Gabe thought he wore out his welcome on this weekend, because he was so much fun on the 2 Atlanta shows he was on.
Yeah, and it's something where Stalker Ichikawa is such a... And one of the reasons why I think Stalker Ichikawa is probably the best comedy wrestler of all time, and I've said this many times before, you immediately see Stalker Ichikawa, you get his deal, you don't need any explanation. Like, if you're someone that was, like, brought to this show, you'd be like, that guy is a wrestler? How is this guy a wrestler? He just looks like a little creep. And he gets murdered, and you're like, okay, this is why. He's the weakest wrestler in the world. And, I mean, I'm willing to guess why he didn't go to these shows, Case, and I bet you have a feeling why as well. But, seriously, like, doing, like, Stalker Ichikawa, like, carve out 10 minutes on each of your show and have, like, the best comedy wrestler of all time do his stuff. Like, he plays the hits. The hits are always fantastic. Stalker Ichikawa, if I'm ever, like, booking a DGUSA revival show with you, Case, we're bringing in the god. He's coming over.
Oh, my God,
Like,
yeah.
He's on the list.
Yeah, I mean, he could have wrestled a John Davis type the next year when John Davis is a heel. He could have wrestled Sabu. I would like to see Stalker Ichikawa versus Sabu. Who wouldn't? There was, weirdly, we're going to talk a lot about wasted potential on this show. A lot of wasted potential booking Stalker Ichikawa dream matches in Dragon Gate USA.
All right, I have one for you, and I think this one is, I'm going to go off the beaten path. I know that Larry Dallas will be very happy that I make this one. Stalker Ichikawa versus Scott Reed.
Yeah, that is what we are doing when we get the pencil for that revival show. That is first thing down on the paper. Scott Reed versus Stalker Ichikawa.
Yeah, gosh. But, like, yeah, like, you have him here, and, like, Brodie, of course, because Stalker, like, one of the things that's great about Stalker Ichikawa, tremendous at selling. He did a fucking John Woo bump off of his shoulder tackle. Like, as the first bump of the match, he flew back 12 feet. It was tremendous. And, I could pretty much just do a series. Like, if we get to a certain point in the Rewind and Rewatch where we're, like, through DGUSA, we've done, like, going through, like, storylines and things like this, I feel like the best of Stalker Ichikawa would probably be, like, the most pleasant, like, recording day and prep we'd ever have.
Yeah, that would be a good time.
Like, Stalker went up against Necro Butcher. Like, come on.
On a Dragon Gate show, on the Dragon Gate LA show, Stalker Ichikawa versus Necro Butcher. That is what we are missing from this show and from future Wrestlemania Weekend shows is just the what? And I do think that is arguably a missed opportunity on Dragon Gate USA, is, especially on these bigger shows, just kind of having that eye-popping match between a Dragon Gate talent and just some guy. And I do think there's a place for that. And it's, the way Gabe operates. I mean, he has a very tight-knit circle, and he doesn't, necessarily care about you unless you're in that circle. I don't really think that's wrong of him. But watching Stalker here, it just seems like, man, he should have come over more. Really fun stuff here against Brodie Lee.
Yeah, And then afterwards, Blood Warriors treat Stalker like that he is a mosquito. They do like a pretty prolonged mosquito bit where they act like that Sheamus' finger is a mosquito and they all slap him and stomp him, and they keep it up with that. And then Ronin comes out, and then Brodie Lee interrupts and wants Chuck Taylor, and that goes straight into our next match. Chuck Taylor versus Brodie Lee. Brodie Lee wins, and yeah, these cage match times, I should have paid more attention to Larry Legend on this show, because it says 6 minutes and 49 seconds, but this felt longer than 6 minutes and 49 seconds. Did you write down what Larry Legends had for ring time?
The only time that I caught Larry saying was the opening match. None of
okay.
I don't remember him doing that for any of the following bouts. I will say that match time might be right, because this match did feel longer, and it's because I wasn't really loving this match. Brodie Lee, Chuck Taylor, two guys I really like, didn't like this match a lot.
You see, I actually really liked this match. So Brodie won with a Liger Bomb, and the reason why I like this match, I went 3.5 stars on it, because this was like I know we're talking about how this match felt like longer than what it was. It was a very simple story being told. Yes, it's like an ineffective use of Chuck Taylor having him job out to Brodie Lee in what felt like a job. Like, I know a lot of people like go like, oh, are things a job? Is this guy getting jobbed out? No, he got jobbed here. He came in, he had a great House of Fire. Brodie Lee kind of had to adapt because he's a larger worker. Chuck Taylor was not a small guy. Like, he's 6 foot legit. And I just feel like that this was a really like smartly worked match that eventually Brodie gets tired of him and puts him away. And I felt like this really was like more of a TV match on this show, which for WrestleMania Weekend, that's actually a bad thing. But I ended up really enjoying this.
It's just another one of those puzzling things when it comes to Brodie Lee, where he destroyed Rich Swann the prior weekend. He kind of destroys Chuck Taylor here, but there's never any Brodie Lee Open the Freedom Gate title matches coming up soon. Like, he was just a guy that was such an effective muscle in the Blood Warriors unit, but still could have been so much more. And it's... maybe that's my hang up here, is it's like, well, nothing really came of this, and it's a little bit frustrating. This is the show. I'm very frustrated about the show, if you can't tell, because we're now 3 real matches in. I'm not going to count Stalker versus Brodie, which was a highlight. It's
a delight.
Yeah, but other than that, I've got the opener at 2 3/4. I've got the 6-way at 2.5, and I've got this at 2 3/4 as well. So not a show that I'm loving up to this point.
Yeah, like, and here's the thing. We're going to get to a point in the show where I immediately just hated everything. So it's a legit thing that this show is very disappointing in a lot of ways. After this match, Blood Warriors grabbed a mic, he said, and they told Ronin to go home, and then said Shima and Doi are ready for a fight, and that went right into the Open the United Gate match. The World 1 team of the current, at the time, Open the Dream Gate champion, Masato Yoshino, and the current Open the Brave Gate champion of the time of the show, Pac, defended their titles against Shima and Naruki Doi in 22 minutes and 58 seconds when Yoshino locked in the Sol Naciente on Doi. And, Case, this is a match that, given the tenor of how you feel about this, I might be much higher on this match than you were, so I want you to take it away first.
Yes, I know, because you either sent me a message about it or tweeted about it or something, and I knew immediately that you are much higher on this match than I was. Now, this is not the first time on a WrestleMania weekend that Shima and Naruki Doi have teamed together, because WrestleMania Weekend 2006, Better Than Our Best, it's Shima and Doi against Aries and Strong, and I like that match much more than this. Now, this is not a bad match. I think Masato Yoshino in particular was phenomenal in this match. This is a low-key great Yoshino individual performance. But I do think the 4 names involved, Pac, Masato Yoshino, Shima, and Naruki Doi, this is probably the worst match possible for these 4 to have. Now, I gave it 3.5. I did not hate this by any means. Thought it was very good at points. There's a lot of Yoshino Doi interactions that I really liked. But I was let down because I didn't feel like this was the WrestleMania Weekend epic that it deserved to be. And something that we talked about last week that I think is incredibly apt to this match as well is the low ceiling. Pac was really handicapped by not being able to do most of his offense in this building, and it was another one of those bummers. Like, I liked this, but I didn't love it. It's a Dragon Gate tag match with these 4 guys. I really wanted to love it. So sell me on it, Mike. What am I missing here?
So I feel like that this was one of the all-time great tag matches with Doi and Yoshino as opponents.
I love their chemistry together. That was the high point, was whenever those two were in the ring.
And I'm going to... The whole thing with Pac and the lower ceiling, I did not notice it. It was there. And maybe that I was wearing such rose-colored glasses seeing Doyoshi go at it that I didn't think about it. Oh, Pac can't dive at all. Because you're totally right about that case. That was a huge problem in this match, was that you can happen. But you get to really see something in it. And it's something that I've noticed on previous shows, but it really was this week in that I felt like Blood Warriors, at least towards the American audience, really gelled into this great Rudo unit. And I felt like that Shima and Doi were just tremendous dickheads in this. Like, the story of the match, at least for me, felt like that they were isolating Pac. Of course, Shima had his history with Pac, and we know Ricochet and Pac are in this year-long feud over who's the best high flyer in the world. And they're just isolating him and trolling Yoshino for like the good first 10 minutes of this match. And I felt like that was one of those things that like Naruki Doi was pretty much at the forefront of this, just trolling them and doing this. And it just really made me think that Naruki Doi, as a single wrestler, not in a tag team, but as a single wrestler, is one of the top 10 tag team wrestlers of all time. And I know for you that's not a controversial thing at all, but it's something that needs to be said, and it needs to be blared from the mountaintop, that Naruki Doi is one of the top 10 tag team wrestlers of all time. And it was just remarkable. And then Yoshino does the drive-by dropkick 3 years before Roman Reigns would do it. And he does it with such gusto, running halfway to backstage and just doing a full-on sprint and doing the sliding dropkick on the apron that ruled. Naruki Doi was just an MVP in this. And this was like the matches that, as we are going to be getting away slowly and slowly from the kind of Japanese talent they're using and how everything's fit in, this is the kind of match that needs to be on every single DGUSA show. And I think that's a fair thing to say, even as someone that's more down on it case, that this, you need to have a 2-on-2 match like this every show. Like, they should find ways to have a special match like this. I don't think that's too unpopular. And then you had the combination Tokarev Bosu, which was fucking nuts. Just was a brutal move. And it just, for me, it hit me my special spot, and I gave it 4.5 stars.
I think that's entirely fair. I liked a lot of this match. I do think, especially given 2 weeks ago, Open the Southern Gate, when I'm talking about how Pac is just this revelation and was so unbelievably good in that match, and then seeing him being unable to do that because of the building he's in was so frustrating to me. But you are right on the money about Yoshino and Doi. They were terrific here. I will say, thank God that Pac and Yoshino versus Shima and Ricochet did not happen in this building. We get that match.
Oh God,
we get that match down the line later on this year at a building that is much more prepared for whatever they are going to do. Because also, this is right before Spike Mohicans really become a thing. I think this would have been the first straight 2-on-2 Shima and Ricochet tag together. When we get that match later on in the year, they are a fully gelled unit and one of the great short-lived tag teams of all time. So I think this match is unfortunate. I would have liked to have seen this match in another building on another show, because I think it could have been great, but I also think it is a better option than a possible failed Pac Yoshino Shima Ricochet match with these low ceilings.
Yeah, it's something that, I mean, we're probably going to be saying this a whole lot more, Case. Like, we started with the Ace Arena, but we will be complaining about bad venues for moves that can't be happening for the rest of the series.
It's weird. It was something that I didn't even think of until Joey Bay brought it up last week, and then I was like, yeah, like, you're right. Pac couldn't do anything, except for he does a springboard 450, which he does that in such a weird way where he really doesn't get a ton of air on it. It's such a violent flip the way Pac does that springboard 450, but he can't really go to the top rope or else he's going to go through the ceiling. And that frustrated me watching this match.
Yeah, no, and I think that's totally justified. And then we had something else that is totally frustrating afterwards. After this match, and as the way that they go to intermission, Johnny Gargano and Ronin come out, and then Johnny Gargano makes a very bad transphobic joke that makes a pun off of Shima's name. It's bad. It was not funny then. It was never funny, and the crowd immediately shits on it. So a crowd in 2011 immediately saying like that's a terrible joke, but they probably thought it was just lame and not just horribly derogatory and offensive. And then they say that maybe it should be that Blood Warriors should go home and maybe they're not the most dominant stable in DGUSA. And that was it until after intermission.
I was pumped when this promo started because Rich Swann came out in Shima's goggles, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. Like, I'm gonna crack my knuckles and sit back and watch the Masters at work. And then Gargano took such a sharp left turn into something deeply problematic, and I was like, oh my god, I hate this show. I hate this show.
Yeah, it's just really, everyone, just if you're rewatching this or listening before you watch, skip this segment. Just hit on WN Live on your DVD. Just hit next track. It's not worth it. WWN Live promo, and then we come back from intermission as Larry Legend brings out Lenny Leonard. Case, you knew I was going to get tongue-tied there for a second, didn't you?
Hey, look, it happens to the best of us, Mike. Do not beat yourself up.
Yeah, at least I'm not doing this on Twitter this time. So that brings out Lenny Leonard. He brings out the newest signees for DGUSA, Dark City Fight Club, and that is John Davis and Corey Chavis. And John Davis is that the Dark City Fight Club came to DGUSA to prove that they are one of the best tag teams in the world, and that brought out Callahan and Cannon, and they said that they were here to fight, and that led to Dark City Fight Club versus Callahan and Cannon. Cannon got the pin with a glimmering warlock on Chavis, and kind of like a match that I was like, when like this match happened, like one of my big goals in the series, thing I said before, I'm ready to watch John Davis through 2020 and 2021's eyes. Just as someone that was really down on John Davis when DGUSA happened, I was ready to go through it with open eyes, and this was not a match that made me change my opinion of John Davis and DGUSA. Thought this was okay, and it just kind of happened.
I would like to know, and this is our fault for not doing the research, or at least I didn't, maybe Mike knows, but they announced that they're signing or bringing in Dark City Fight Club, but this is the only time Corey Chavis works Dragon Gate USA. It is a John Davis solo outing from here on out. Now, I think Mike is going to come around. I think there is a lot of good John Davis that is yet to come. This match, I understand why it was on the card. I did not hate it, but it also was not good.
No, it was there, and it's something that, given like these four guys, and even though it's like impromptu and there's bigger things on the card, you would think that they would have a better match in them. Would you say?
I would
that's like the
completely
disappointing
agree
thing
with
about
that.
this.
Yeah, it's four big guys who I think if this match happens in 2020, not their 2020 state, but these four young guys, if this match happens now, I think just with the way, it's going to be a weird guy for me to shout out right now, but even the way like a Matt Tremont has worked this beefy bruiser, hashtag Hoss Division type style to the indies, I think now in 2020, they would have a much better version of this match. I guess Keith Lee was probably the more obvious example. I dug deep and went for Matt Tremont as my big guy on the indies reference, but it just seemed like they had a lot of ideas and didn't really execute them, which in a way is kind of the Sami Callihan story.
Yeah. Then after the match, Callahan talks about being frustrated and just really fucking angry. They cussed a whole lot in this, in case you know how I feel about cussing. They said that he found another nasty dude. They don't care about anything that you can call them. They don't care about anything. So you can call us dirty, ugly fucks for all we care. And that became very hammered home. That when I was watching this, I was like, oh, they made like a one-side comment about being D.U.F. and now they're going to call themselves D.U.F. from now on. And I was like really stoked that it was going to be subtle for once. But nothing is subtle in this promotion, as I was promptly just hammered down everyone's throat.
Between the cussing of Sami Callihan and Eric Cannon and the presence of Trina Michaels, and we all know Mike Spears is canon that he is never horny, this must be a tough show for you to watch. Dragon Gate USA is changing by the second, and it's almost like you don't even recognize the promotion anymore.
Well, it's not that I'm never horny. I just don't feel like it's appropriate to have another just cishet dude talk about being horny. It's just, who cares?
It's almost like we
Who
have
cares?
enough of that in the marketplace. That
Right,
grass
yeah.
been covered.
So Mike Spears' personal horniness will always be publicly private. No one's business other than my own and whatever partners I may be with.
I think that's fair, Mike. now that we've discussed it many times on the show, you're actually completely right, and it has legitimately changed my outlook on some things. I'm like, you know what, I'm good. I don't need to be like this in front of people. I can just pocket that for later. You've changed my life, Mike Spears, for the better.
I'm just saying, dudes, cishet dudes, let's reel it back a little bit.
We've had a good run. Look, things have been good for us for a long time. Let's reel it back.
Too good for.
Let's reel it back a little bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah. And then we had AR Fox backstage, as I'm going to not even try to segue here, being disappointed by the week, but it's okay because it's just a taste of AR Fox. And for just a completely babyface promo that happened on this show, thank you, AR Fox, for just giving us a babyface promo.
AR Fox promos will always make me laugh because he seems like the most laid-back, relaxed dude in real life, and he looks so terrified cutting these promos.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can definitely relate. I can talk into a microphone just fine, but get a camera or get me on a stage, then I immediately start clamming up. I completely understand that.
Yes.
So, and then we had a promo for United NYC. My point about Freedom Fight continues here. Everyone who's watched this probably already watched United NYC. And then we have the last match in DGUSA, Jimmy Jacobs versus Austin Aries. And Jimmy Jacobs won this match with a small package, and I hated this match.
Really?
It had like a weird vibe all over it. They were being like all jokey about it, and like it just was like, this is like Aries is being like all jokely, and like this is like a WrestleCon match. This felt like a WrestleCon match to me, and it just was like a weird out of nowhere small package. It did a brawling thing, and then like Lenny brought up like, we all know their history about that, and it's just like, okay, yeah, and it just like happened. And maybe it's because I knew it was immediately going to happen next. I was just going to be like, okay, well, fuck off towards this. Sorry, cussed again, but it's just a weird vibe match that went on for like 15 minutes. Then we had like another half hour, and we got into like, not like 2010 where there was like an hour that was like just some of the utterly worst stuff that they still have put on. This just was just there, out of place, and taking up time.
Well, this is a slog of a show. I mean, I think this is the longest Dragon Gate USA show up to this point, because this is almost 3 hours long. And,
right,
you know, your mileage may vary on the tag match, but the first half of the show is not a good show.
I mean, when Chuck Taylor versus Brodie Lee in a squash match is your best match in the opening half of the show before the tag match, it's just, you know, you're going to be in for a long time. And I mean, there's still about another hour left on the show with only technically one match on the docket.
That was what shocked me, because I normally watch these shows in 2 sittings. I take a break at intermission and then, you know, either come back. If I'm going to watch it at night, I'll come back the next day and finish it up, or sometimes I'll finish it all in one day. But yeah, I mean, I liked this match. There's one spot in particular that I think you are completely right about, where they do the Aries head scissors spot, where what are you going to do? Put Austin Aries in a head scissors, and then, you know, he ends up countering it with the drop kick that we've all seen a million times, and they make reference to that in the match. It's a little off-putting, especially because Aries connects with the move. It's not like Jimmy Jacobs outsmarts him. Like, he just does what he said he was going to do. It's very weird. I really like their chemistry together. I loved their Ring of Honor matches. I think this was, I mean, I gave it 3.5. I liked it. I liked the finish, given the idea that it is supposed to be Aries' last match in the promotion, for Aries to, you know, kick him in the head, set up for the brainbuster, and then right as he is about to hit the brainbuster, Jacob small packages him, match over. I liked that finish. It felt like a greatest hits match between the two, certainly not as heated as the 2008 Ring of Honor feud they had, but it shouldn't have been as heated as that. It was a greatest hits match. I think the WrestleCon thing is fair to say as sort of an upper mid-card WrestleCon match, where on paper we're like, yeah, that's going to be awesome, and then it's good, but it's not that good. I think that's entirely fair. I think it's a little bit more serious than maybe an undercard comedy bout, but there are a few moments where, yeah, it's weird just how jovial they are about this entire thing.
Yeah, it just gets really awkward and weird. I went 2 stars on it, but it tells you how much I on these shows, and especially on a 3-hour show, I really love this series because these shows are usually about 2 hours and 15 to 2 hours and 30 minutes, probably because of the pay-per-view limitations at the time. And then you have like just superfluous stuff that we're going to be facing more and more as they're going to be on pay-per-view going forward. And this felt superfluous to me.
Mike, I've got a quote for you that I think adequately describes maybe who you are and how you're feeling about this. And it's a quote from Austin Aries, and it's a quote from after this match, where Austin Aries is on the microphone, and he says, "A small vocal minority of haters that want to sit behind their keyboards and they pretend that they know what goes on in this business, and it taints it for the people that truly respect what they do. Mike Spears, you're nothing more than a keyboard warrior, my friend."
Well, he got me there. He got me there.
That was Aries cuts this excessively long post-match promo
it's an Austin Aries promo.
It is an Austin Aries promo to the fullest extent. And before anyone else comes out, it's just Aries in the ring. He's just going on and on about the haters and the people that have doubted him and this industry. And he is such a miniature Triple H. He is so obnoxious when he is cutting promos. And then Ronin comes out, and Mike, you can take it from there.
Yeah, then Ronin comes out, and he says he's going to pass the torch to Ronin. He compliments everyone. He says, "Chuck Taylor, the crowd likes you. I don't get it."
What a fucking asshole. God damn. It's Austin Aries.
I mean,
it's so unlikable.
Like, on the day we're recording, I was watching Dark, and there was a Best Friends versus Beaver Boys match. And during the match, I was like, Chuck Taylor has been one of the best North American wrestlers for about 12 years, and no one talks about that enough.
Plunder King, one of the best brawlers there is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, fuck it. I mean, I always say fuck Austin Aries. I think I've pretty much said that since the start of him showing up here. And that kind of continues here. I will cuss there, so that's fair. And then it complimented Johnny Gargano for being like a complete wrestler, and Rich Swann for being one more incredible high flyers. And he says that the big moment was when he said he was going to hang it up here. He got a bunch of phone calls from people, and then Blood Warriors comes out, and then he says, "Shima, you were one of the people who called me too. And I respected this, but how y'all run things is very disrespectful, and I don't get why you're all doing this." And he's like, the way you do beat downs on people, well, for once you're outnumbered, so get in the ring with us, and let's settle it here. And then that was a big bait and switch, and then Austin Aries attacked all the members of Ronin, and the commentary made a big point about saying that he found his place. Aries said he was going to leave unless he found his place. And he found his place, and he unofficially here, but it's pretty certain that he joins Blood Warriors, and the crowd is just confused, is probably the right way to put it. They were confused, right?
Well, it was confusing, because you have to remember the talk at the time was that Aries was legitimately going to retire, and that this was billed as his final Dragon Gate USA match, and then he cuts this promo, which implies that he's going to be sticking around for much longer, and it's not exactly the Summer of Punk in the way that it's constructed. By the way, the first of 2 times that I'll be mentioning the Summer of Punk in this episode. But, yeah, it's a convoluted angle. I mean, it took so long to get to the point, and it's just for kind of a generic, double-cross heel turn. And, obviously not personally, but professionally, I have a little bit more of a tolerance for Aries and Ring, although I think he has been very disappointing in Dragon Gate USA. And yeah, this promo did not exactly make me excited to see Austin Aries, Blood Warriors member, especially when Brodie Lee is right there. That's the American that needs to carry the torch, not Austin Aries.
Yeah, like Brodie, if anything, has proven that he's a great microphone worker during all of this. So it's just like, okay, this is happening, and it just like now Austin Aries is going to be doing things with Blood Warriors, and that's the world we live in right now, Case. And what also is a world we are living in right now is we get a big recap of Jon Moxley, Rebby Sky, and Tozawa in a music video that I was really into it as it started, and then like a lot of the videos on the show went on kind of long, this music video.
It was I will always take a good feud recap, though. It was long, but I don't mind this.
That's fair. And then we had Tozawa and Kamikaze come out. Moxley takes a microphone, and he says that if Tozawa fights him right then, right there, and beats him, that he will get a title match, and it'll be a bunkhouse brawl. And then we had no DQ because Tozawa, being a man of high character, took that match. He knew the opportunity. He knew to grasp it. Jon Moxley versus Akira Tozawa in a no DQ match where Akira Tozawa beat Jon Moxley in his last match in DGUSA with a German suplex in about 4 minutes.
So, just to reiterate, because I know we talked about it on one of the prior episodes, but the angle going into this weekend was that YAMATO and Moxley refused to grant Akira Tozawa a title shot. So that's why Moxley comes around here and says, if you beat me, you can get the title shot. And this is Jon Moxley's final match in the promotion. A guy that was really the first homegrown American star that they had, because before that it's Davey Richards and the Young Bucks and Brian Kendrick, and those guys had already been discovered, were already names on the independent scene and beyond. Jon Moxley was a CZW IWA Mid-South guy who came into Dragon Gate USA in November of 2009, the third show, and launched to indie superstardom at this point. And the fact that this is his final match and his final weekend is spent, he has a fun match with Naruki Doi at Open the Southern Gate. I will give him that. But to wrestle Eric Cannon the night before, and then to have a throwaway match with Akira Tozawa, I cannot believe this is how the Jon Moxley era ends in Dragon Gate USA. Because there is so much potential here. I mean, we are talking about the American superstar of the promotion, more so than Johnny Gargano, I think. And the guy that books the Summer of Punk, Gabe Sapolsky, does this for Jon Moxley. If there's something political that happened where Moxley said, well, I'm not going to do this, this, or this, and you're listening to the show and you have that knowledge, please let me know. Because, I mean, I'm against the idea of Tozawa splitting off from Kamikaze anyway. I didn't like that story because I thought it was lazily done. It was put at the end of a show promo that wasn't in front of an audience, and they just threw it in there like they needed to come up with an angle for WrestleMania Weekend stat, and that is the best idea they had. But, besides that, just the idea that, again, Brodie Lee continuing to be mismanaged. You could have been building to Mox versus Brodie Lee this entire weekend, with Brodie Lee pinning him and then becoming the de facto American face of Blood Warriors. You could have had Mox and Tozawa having an actual match on night one, leading to Tozawa getting the title shot tonight. Yes, that robs us of Pac versus Akira Tozawa, but that's okay because that match happens for a second time on a Dragon Gate USA show next year. They could have done a six-man with Kamikaze, with Moxley, Tozawa, and YAMATO against any trio of Blood Warriors guys. They could have kept the unit together, officially pit the former heel unit, the people that ruined the Canadian shows because they were on the shows too much in Kamikaze USA. They could have had Moxley, Tozawa, and YAMATO against Shima Doi and Brodie, against Shima Ricochet and Brodie. Instead, they have a 4-minute brawl with Akira Tozawa and Jon Moxley, and it's not efficient, and it's not effective, and it is such an awful way to end Jon Moxley's Dragon Gate USA run. I still cannot believe this is how he goes out, with a whimper instead of a roar. This right now is the biggest booking mistake that Dragon Gate USA has faced. Not having something big, not having something grand, not having something heated for Jon Moxley's final weekend of the company. I do not understand how this is the idea that they went ahead and booked. I can't believe it.
And it's something that I remember at the time, and this is just my memory. When I looked through like observers and things like this, there was only really notes of it after the fact, and I might have missed something. But I remember at the time, people were pretty certain that Moxley was getting signed. So this wasn't like I don't believe, and I'm going to use my therapy words here, I don't believe that this was a surprise to Gabe that John rolled up in Burlington and said, "Hey, Gabe." Sorry, I'm pretending that he is.
No, that ruled.
"Hey, Gabe, this is my last week, partner. I'm going to New York." I don't think he did that.
No, of course not. Like, there's no way that happened. And again, if someone's listening that can double source us on when Gabe might have known that Moxley was signing and if there were any issues of Mox for whatever reason, and I maybe don't even think he's wrong if he had a list of provisions in place to, I'm not going to do this, this, or this. I would just like to know, because I have a really hard time believing this was option 1, plan A for the farewell of Jon Moxley, especially given Gabe's track record of typically sending guys out with pretty strong farewells.
Yeah, I mean, look at what happened last year with just Brian Kendrick, and Paul London. They did a very concerted effort of sending them out there. They had a official handing of the torch over from the Young Bucks to Chikara Sekigun. This has not been a surprise. The only person that they kind of just we're done with him, fuck him, was Davey Richards. And as we talked about on that episode, for pretty good reason, they pretty much treated him like this. It's just something that I can't believe. And I said at the beginning of this weekend that I thought this was a cardinal sin, but now I feel like I could chisel this in stone. This is one of the biggest cardinal sins of Dragon Gate USA, was not having not even a satisfying plan. This felt like this was thrown together.
Completely.
This felt like the completely thrown together. And just we'll get more into this after we finish the main event. The overall just treatment of Jon Moxley entering this promotion is something that, as we rewatch this, just confounds me. And I'm looking at my Observer notes, because in case you know how I love my Observer notes.
It's one of your features. I love it.
Yeah. I have this from the WrestleMania Wrap-Up Observer from April 11th. So this was the week after the show. Jonathan Good, age 25, who worked as Jon Moxley for a number of independents, most notably CZW and Dragon Gate USA, was offered a developmental deal and is expected to be started soon. He placed second in Best Brawler in last year's award and also placed in Best 10 on Best on Interviews. So, that's an interesting paragraph from Dave. I think we can both say, because usually when people have these big signings and this is happening, usually it gets a bigger write-up. Am I wrong in saying that? Usually there's a little bit more there.
No, I think that's fair, but I don't entirely know where you're going with it.
Is this something where I did the voice where he sprung it on Gabe? And I don't believe he did. But this paragraph, 2 sentences from Dave Meltzer, when Dave Meltzer usually, we went through line by line all the solid coverage Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez did of this. We even dipped into the torch a bit for that, if I remember correctly.
For the Davey Richards stuff, yeah.
Yeah. 2 sentences. 2 sentences. It makes you wonder. Or at least it makes me wonder.
I also just think that in the case of maybe the Phoenix Exodus, as we'll call it, with the Bucks and Davey and TJP, those were guys that were more vocal, and also that caused a stir where Gabe had to give public statements to say one way or another. This is just a guy signing. So, again, I would like to know more. I will pivot for just a second, again, before we talk about the main event, to once again prove how I think the Kamikaze USA breakup was so wasteful. Mike, do you know what the main event of the next show that we watch is?
It's, they're up in Boston, aren't they, for that show?
They are in...
Or New York City?
Well, they're in Revere, Massachusetts for this one.
No, I don't know. I'm going to look at this card, but please tell me before I click.
It's the Open the United Gate title match. It's Masato Yoshino and Pac, and they defend against Akira Tozawa and YAMATO. So they go through this entire breakup angle where YAMATO turns on Tozawa and he's not worthy of being in Kamikaze. And a show later, and it's not even after the main event, which we'll talk about in just a second, because it is an excellent match, but it's not even like they have this huge reconciliation. They're cool afterwards. They embrace, but it's not like they are back on the chain gang together. And for this to be the main event of the next show, how did they not do Kamikaze USA versus Blood Warriors and pit that team that, again, ran roughshod in Canada, was an overbearing heel presence, and against the current heels Blood Warriors? I think that dynamic would have been so interesting. Mox versus Japanese talent is always encouraged. And instead we got a 4-minute Akira Tozawa versus Jon Moxley match, and the story was rendered pointless on the very next show.
And that kind of colors my opinion on the main event as well. So, yep, that happened.
I do love the main event. I will say I love the main event. Where do you stand?
I went 4 1/4. I liked it a lot. I liked it a whole lot.
So did I.
So before that,
so
Rebby Sky runs in. They attack Trina Michaels. She attacks Trina Michaels. Just really awkward and unnecessary shit. That's all I have in the notes there. Trina Michaels would like wrestle one of two matches, and at least on Cage Match, like the next day, which is kind of interesting. Not in DGUSA, of course, but like down in Florida. So that was the end of Jon Moxley and Dragon Gate USA, everyone. Went out in 3 minutes, and then a bigger thing was the brawl of his valet against the woman he felt like he was scorned by. That was it.
What a bizarre... That is a point we neglected here, but Mox's biggest angle coming into this weekend is him versus Rebby Sky, which is just...
Right.
It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable because I couldn't believe she was brought... I guess if Matt Hardy's there, okay, maybe she'll come down south, but like... Why? She is not over on these shows. She's not over like Akira Tozawa and YAMATO in this main event, which I will say now, talking about this main event, it is a slow starter. But once this match gets going, oh my God, this is something else. I mean, they really, really went out there and killed it. And I think this match is important. You talked earlier on the show about the tag match and how every Dragon Gate USA show should have had that 2-on-2 tag match, that Dragon Gate style, that just no other company on earth can duplicate. And I have noticed with Akira Tozawa, with his match here against YAMATO, his match the night before against Pac, which, as I've said before, I consider Pac to be a Japanese talent, or a Dragon Gate Trueborn, rather, and against BB Hulk on United Finale, Tozawa is carrying the spirit of those first few shows, the Masato Yoshino versus Dragon Kid matches, the Shingo versus Naruki Doi match. That Dragon Gate Trueborn energy is now being exclusively carried by Akira Tozawa. There's a moment in this match where he kicks out of a brainbuster. YAMATO picks him up, hits the Galleria. Tozawa kicks out at one, and then he finally goes down on a second Galleria. Once this match got going, it was really something special. But Mike, given everything we've talked about, given how Akira Tozawa, who came over to Dragon Gate USA in May 2010, it's now April 2011, and in 11 months, he has become maybe the most over guy in the promotion, not named Shima.
Yeah.
This moment, WrestleMania Weekend, are you putting the belt on Akira Tozawa here?
You know, that's the thing that was playing through my mind as I was watching this match case, and I don't know. Like, so at this point, it was not known when Akira Tozawa was going to go back to Japan, but it would be a natural inclination for people to think, okay, he's been over here almost for a full calendar year. That's usually a solid amount of time. But there's also the big thing about when you go on excursion, especially in Dragon Gate, they like to make the emphasis that you've done something on excursion. Like, they made a big deal about how Shingo Takagi won the ROH World Tag Team titles, correct? Like, they made a huge deal about that at the time. So
yeah, it was a big deal. Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles. How could you not be excited?
This could have been like the trophy he brought back, saying like, I not only did I go over there, but I beat YAMATO for the championship of our affiliate over here. This is why I did it on my year off from the main roster and dropped the title belt on the mat. And that would have been interesting. That would have provided I think that his return into Kobe, his return into Corkin Hall in May of 2011 would have been more effective if he kind of just rolled up and dropped the title.
I would have pulled the trigger here. And this is a conversation, by the way. We'll have this conversation when we talk about 2012, because I think there's another opportunity there to put the title on Tozawa. But given everything you've talked about, the idea that a Dragon Gate guy would go on excursion to their American promotion and conquer that promotion. And yes, this would have been an incredibly short title run for YAMATO. He would have had the defense against Austin Aries, and I believe that would have been it, 'cause I don't remember what he did on United Philly off the top of my head, but he won the show on United New York. But he would have had the one defense the night before. But I also just think, man, Tozawa had that energy, and he's the guy that's going to be pushing this company forward. And given everything we know about Akira Tozawa and what's to come in June 2011, I think him rolling into Corkin Hall with the Freedom Gate title around his waist, I think that would have made for a better story. Now, I do not fault them for what they did. I do not even necessarily disagree with the decision. If I was calling the shots, I would have put the belt on Tozawa here.
Yeah, like, and especially with how they book him, and we will get more into this because by the time the next week happens, we are going to be right on the precipice. Like, I'm looking at this Fearless card. This Fearless card is on June 3rd. I aired when I said the Akira Tozawa return was on June 8th. So 5 days earlier, he had his last weekend as a formal excursion person. Excursion person, a wrestler on excursion. You know what I meant.
Excursion person, that counts.
Excursion person, yeah. But he is not booked with BB Hulk until later in 2011 after he goes through both Yamato and Shingo and has a title challenge against the Dreamgate champion. They could have had him come in with the Freedom Gate title, and that would have been... I mean, he's treated seriously immediately, but like the idea more so of, hey, this was a guy that was as much of a cast-off as anyone could ever be, came back and came in and dropped the title belt on the ring as he made his surprise return. And,
go ahead.
And I say all of this with like a match that, other than like our divergent opinion on the tag match, easily matched the night. Like, this match told a tremendous story. Tozawa proving himself to Yamato, Tozawa proving that he became this transcendent presence for the people who watched him and people who watched him on this excursion, and the fans of Akira Tozawa who waited like so long for him to get this opportunity. He knocked it out of the park here. And the idea that he had to, they kicked out at one after the first Galleria, and the look on Yamato's face of, this guy is something different now. The first time that we've really seen a Dragon Gate guy give that look to Tozawa, that would kind of become the thing for the next 5 years of him in the promotion, that Akira Tozawa, he's the Sano Monster, and the bigger thing about him being the Sano Monster is you have to kill Akira Tozawa by fire. And that was like the first time this happened was in this match, and I think that even though I would want to strap him up at that point, I don't know if it does any business difference at this point. I feel like the business is pretty much going to be the way it is, at least at this time.
I think that's fair. I think a year from now, it might make a business difference. Here, it's all kind of the same. Yeah, it's just, this is like an incredible match. And it's a match that, on a very bad show, leaves you on a very nice note, even though they immediately kind of like mess things up the next month as you got into. But going back to that question case, I think you still do strap him up there, even though you had the moment of that one like central moment of, oh God, this guy won't go down. So I think as we conclude here, what I was referencing at the top of the show, this is unfortunately kind of the prototype for what would become of these Gabe Sapolsky WrestleMania shows, where it's longer than most. You got a match, for me, the tag match that just didn't deliver. I think Aries and Jacobs was a big match that I think the same could be said about that. And it just seems like one blunder after another, and then you get that one match that you go, okay, you know what, I'm glad I paid the money for it. But still, like, for this to be a WrestleMania weekend show with Gargano and Rave in the opener, which I get it, there were injuries, they were dealt a bad hand, but that match was just inexcusably long. The six-way, an okay Brodie Lee versus Chuck Taylor match. Again, the tag match we differ on, but, you know, you get the point. A D.U.F. angle, and then an Austin Aries Jimmy Jacobs match before we hit the final segment here with Tozawa versus Mox and Tozawa versus Yamato. I just feel like I've seen Evolve shows on the same weekend with the same results, and it's very frustrating. This was a step in the wrong direction for Dragon Gate USA.
Yeah, and with the way that Moxley was written off and the way that they shoehorned Austin Aries into Blood Warriors, and the way that I brought this up on the Burlington show, they buried Ronin this weekend. Their potential breakout stars, like the big North American stars that Gabe Sapolsky was direly looking for since before the show, the promotion's inception. The only win I think this weekend that they had was, the only two wins they had was a 4-way freestyle, was that freestyle earlier where Rich Swann was just like, oh yeah, Rich Swann won the match. And then the only other match was Johnny Gargano beating Jimmy Rave. They buried Ronin this weekend.
Yeah, because Swan loses to Callahan on Open the Southern Gate, and Gargano loses to Shima. And then at Mercury Rising, they lose the 6-man, which I very much disagree with. And so, yeah, it's a tough weekend for them. They essentially win 2 meaningless matches and lose all of the stuff that counted. And it's not a good way to go about this. And I think we can transition into what's to come, this Fearless show that we're going to be talking about next week. Because, Mike, I don't know about you, but looking at this card, this feels like an entirely different promotion. It's like Gabe really hit the reset button after this weekend with no Jon Moxley. The card just, it feels so strange. It's Shima versus Rich Swann. It's a 6-way with Eric Cannon, Brodie Lee, Tony Nese, Alex Colon, AR Fox, and our man, the debuting Scott Reed. It's Asumi Yokosuka versus Ricochet, Masaki Mochizuki versus Sami Callihan, John Davis versus Pinky Sanchez, Austin Aries versus Johnny Gargano, and the main event, like we said, Yoshino and Pac against Tozawa and Yamato. Mike, I don't know what it is about this card, but I feel like this is an entirely different company than the show I just watched.
Yeah, and Mochi's coming in, so you know about me and Mochi, so I'm up for that.
It's a positive.
It's a positive, but like looking at the show, what is Chuck Taylor doing on this show?
He's hurt.
He's not.
He is hurt. He gets injured. We'll talk about it more next week. He is booked in pretty prominent matches this weekend, but he gets hurt on a PWG show and has to pull out of this weekend.
Oh, that's right. He dislocates his shoulder on this before that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about that PWG show.
Yes, we will. A wild bunch of shows, and I was just looking back at those cards earlier today, actually. We will be talking about PWG All-Star Weekend 8 next week.
Yeah, and I think this is the first show that I'm willing to say 2 cardinal sins. At least this weekend had 2 cardinal sins on it, Case, to close this out.
Which is what? The handling of Mox and what else?
Burying Ronin.
Burying Ronin, yeah. The Ronin thing, again, I will let it play out, but I'm very confused as to how they're being used so far.
Okay, I know I argued this in Burlington, so I'm just going to keep this in my notes as a tentative cardinal sin. It might just be an entire year thing where eventually you're like, okay, Mike, cardinal sin, or you'd be like, Mike, get out of here, get lost, you're off your rocker about this. But Jon Moxley, we will not be, unlike other people that we've bid farewell to, we're bidding farewell to Jon Moxley. We will not be talking about him again. Only in retrospect we'll be talking about him on the show, or even more retrospect, as he will not be on any future DGUSA shows. So, Case, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Rewind and Rewatch. Anything you wanted to hit on before we get out of here?
Yeah, real quickly. I want to just quickly summarize the Jon Moxley run in Dragon Gate USA because any time from here on out we'll be talking about Dean Ambrose of FCW fame and WWE fame later on. But the Mox run, he is the first guy that has had a prolonged run in this company that is now leaving. And when Pac goes, I think we'll do the same for him. Off the top of my head, those are kind of the 2 main guys, but I know more people get signed as time goes on. I just can't think of them now. But just to quickly run through Mox's entire Dragon Gate USA run. He comes in on the 3rd show, beats B-Boy in a dark match, and then has that awful work shoot angle with Brian Kendrick. That leads into a Chicago show where he interferes in a Jimmy Jacobs-Brian Kendrick match and gets attacked by Tommy Dreamer. There is the Jimmy Jacobs-Paul London versus Jon Moxley-Brian Kendrick. Just abysmal match in Phoenix, and then the next night we have to sit through a Tommy Dreamer, Jon Moxley match. Once again, WrestleMania Weekend. We go to Canada where he beats Phil Atlas in Toronto, and then has a really fun match with Jimmy Jacobs in Ontario, Canada. Mm-hmm. The first anniversary show, I think Jon Moxley is incredible at the Chikara versus Kamikaze USA elimination match. I think he is the focal point of a match that I really raved about at the time. And then we go to the Midwest. He once again has a hardcore match with Jimmy Jacobs and the Bryan Danielson match in Milwaukee. End of 2010, it's an I Quit match with Jimmy, and then a tag with Akira Tozawa against BB Hulk and Homicide. As we go into 2011, it's the triple shot where he wrestles Jigsaw. He wrestles BB Hulk in a really fun match, and then he has the worst match in company history up to this point with Homicide. And then this weekend, like I said, it's Naruki Doi, it's Eric Cannon, it's Akira Tozawa. So the weird thing about Jon Moxley is that he is involved in some of the worst stuff that Dragon Gate USA ever presented. The angle with Brian Kendrick, the Tommy Dreamer stuff, The Paul London and Jimmy Jacobs versus Brian Kendrick and Jon Moxley match, the Tommy Dreamer match, was just as bad. The Homicide stuff, which I just hated so much. But I don't look at Moxley's run in this company as a failure. I think Moxley is so good that whatever awfulness he was involved in, I have never pinned that on him because I thought he was rising above the situations he was given. I think it's frustrating that we only got him versus BB Hulk in a singles match and him and Naruki Doi in a singles match. And other than that, he was wrestling American talent. But Mike, I just summarized it all there. Big picture, Jon Moxley's legacy in Dragon Gate USA, what is it?
I mean, for him personally, this was his real breakout promotion. Even though he's in part of some of the worst stuff in the promotion's history, multiple times, different lows, deeper lows he gets at times. But Gabe was able to see this guy at a FIP show in Florida and say, okay, I need to have this guy. Maybe it's something where looking over this thing, other than the Jimmy Jacobs feud, all of his stuff and Bryan Danielson, because it's Bryan Danielson, almost all of his stuff with Americans involved, or it was primarily Americans, was terrible. And then you look at the 8-man match. He's not a part of it for a long time, but he's very interesting in it. And him and Yoshino have a couple good back and forths there. And then he has some fun chemistry with BB Hulk. And then him and Naruki Doi work this territory style match that owned. And then Akira Tozawa, only 3 minutes of Akira Tozawa. It's such a dichotomy of his promos. Some of them held up, some of them didn't. A lot of the ones that didn't hold up were analogous to other stuff on the shows that did not hold up, I would say. Stuff in 2010 that you could say in 2010 was still fucked up in 2010, but now you watch back in 2020 and we talked about stuff that Johnny Gargano said on the show.
Yeah, some of the content doesn't hold up, but the skill is there. And that is the thing that
just blew me away from
the start, is from his first promo on. It's oh my God. I mean, I understood why Gabe, and we talked about it on that Philly show, Open the Freedom Gate, just, Gabe writing MySpace messages about how excited he is to work with Jon Moxley. It makes sense. It is so clear that Gabe is losing his mind at the prospect of working with this guy for basically the first 6 months. And then once the Jimmy Jacobs feud ends, and he goes into that just awful business with Homicide, and then this weekend, it's disappointing. It is disappointing, but I think Moxley rose above the entire time. I thoroughly enjoyed rewatching this period of his career.
Yeah, and it's something that, especially seeing where Jon Moxley is in 2020, and seeing how they completely, for what you could say about AEW and what you say about Jon Moxley, because I believe he has more control over what he says in AEW right now, not completely off. And you could definitely see the diamonds that Gabe tried to chisel out some. And I can't look at it as a failure. I can't look at it with Davey Richards, where Davey Richards left so much on the table. With Jon Moxley, just whatever thing he had against working against the Dragon Gate style wrestlers is a shame, because that was where he excelled in, other than Jimmy Jacobs. And that's and the way that you couldn't give it a good definitive blow off with him and Akira Tozawa is probably the most disappointing part about this at all.
I would completely agree. And that is the end of Jon Moxley's run in Dragon Gate USA. And Mike, that is the end, thankfully, of Open the Ultimate Gate 2011.
Yep. You know how we said at the beginning we're going to wonder when we stop enjoying the shows? This was a show that made me assess enjoying this until the main event. One good match is something, but 2 good matches is what it takes for me to say okay, the show's worth it. But Case, I feel this is the first show that you're DGUSA. I get now when people are it fell off a cliff here, that it was really shit.
I honestly think the United finale show, was the United finale show worse? I really hated that final show, the United triple shot. I hated that final show. This one was just too long. It was roughly the same.
Yeah.
One really great match. One match that to me was pretty good, just like the multi-man tag on the United finale show. and then a bunch of undercard stuff that just didn't need to be there. So they're both bad. It's a rough stretch for this promotion, but I like what's to come down the road.
It's interesting. It's going to be interesting getting into the next triple shot. But, Case, I did not think we were going to go this long on this show, talking about a show. I think both of us were probably more interested in talking about what happens with Jon Moxley. But getting to see Tozawa and Yoshino, at least, left the show on the right foot for me. Case, anything you wanted to hit on before we get out of here?
That's all I got, Mike.
All right. You could follow us on Twitter at OpenVoiceGate. You can give us a donation. There's this nice little red button on the Red Circle website. I even provide a link to it in the show notes. You're not obligated. We certainly appreciate it. You can do single donation or reoccurring. Case is on Twitter at _InYourCase. I'm on Twitter at Fujihaya. So for Case, I'm Mike, and we'll catch you next time on Open the Voice Gate, Rewind and Rewatch.